Awesome. Well, thank you everybody for joining our monthly marketing webinar. As you've probably read in the various different emails that we've sent out, this is part of the new marketing rhythm. Second Tuesday of every month at 3 p.m. If you show up at this link, we'll be doing a webinar about something related to marketing, perhaps except for those second Tuesdays of the month that fall on a holiday where it doesn't make any sense. But we are really excited to have you on this webinar and are very excited about the content that we're going to be able to cover over the next 30 minutes to an hour, depending on how many questions you guys have. A couple quick ground rules for you. I'm going to go through here in just a sec and mute everyone just to make sure that the audio clarity on the call is good. So if you do have a question, please use the chat box and we will make sure that we get to the questions. In just a second, I'm going to turn this webinar over to Katie Painanen because this is the area of the organization, or I should say one of the areas of the organization that she is leading and is much better equipped and much better informed to lead the discussion today. But before I did that, I really did want to set the framework about this webinar and the role that it plays in our overall marketing strategy. I think everybody on the call, of course, is familiar with the fact that we started the pay-per-appointment program in October after a series of betas in 2018. And when we were choosing the various different partners we were going to test in 2018, one of the questions that I asked, which to me was the most meaningful question, was for that partner to give us insight as to what they would do to increase lead flow from digital, meaning our digital presence and the lead flow, by 10 times. Not by 1 times or not by 2 times, but by 10 times. And the reason I asked that question is because I wanted to make sure when we chose the national partner for the pay-per-appointment program, we chose a partner who thought exponentially. Not how do we get an extra $500 in pay-per-click advertising to get 2 more appointments a month, but how do we begin to look at Floor Coverings International as a national brand and leverage the opportunities that are associated with that. And I will tell you, after having worked with Choice Local for the last almost 6 months now, rolling out the pay-per-appointment program, I couldn't be more pleased with how they've embraced that vision of taking Floor Coverings International from 100 or so different locations, doing different types of digital marketing, to really helping us develop a vision for how we can become a true brand online when it comes to our digital marketing. We hesitated a bit to hold this webinar today, primarily because we were concerned it might be a distraction from the focus that we rolled out at the annual meeting, and that is balancing our marketing through increased local marketing activities. But ultimately what we decided is that we wanted to put a spotlight on the fact that as an owner, you cannot allow this opportunity and the opportunities that Joe is going to present to distract us from the fact that we still have a tremendous amount of work to do on the local side. If you've been reading the Friday 5 emails, you know that year over year, we are flat when it comes to local marketing appointment generation. We need to continue the great work we're doing, accelerate the great work we're doing on the local side, because it's going to become more of a necessity as Joe and his team really continue to drive our improved digital marketing through some of the strategies that he's going to lay out for you today. So I would be remiss if I didn't take the first few minutes of this webinar to remind everyone that while we're talking about digital, while digital is of course the sexy thing, it's the shiny object that everybody thinks is going to solve every marketing problem known to man, at the end of the day, our priority is to make sure that we have the ability as a brand to balance our marketing locally in 2019 in order to open the door in 2020 for us to get serious about going out and building a brand presence across North America. And so as you hear all these great strategies today, please don't let it become a distraction from the reality that our focus still needs to be on improving that balance in our marketing by increasing the local marketing activities that we have. The good news is, as you just heard me say though, if we're able to do that the work that Joe and his team are doing and are going to share with you today that you can execute whether or not you're on the pay-per-appointment program. It's the kind of work that's going to revolutionize what Floor Coverings International looks like online and create that foundation that we need to truly accelerate as a brand, both offline and online in 2020. So with that caveat, I'm going to turn this over to Katie Painanen and let her lead the webinar moving forward, since this is the area of marketing, one of the areas of marketing that she's led and has done such a good job landing and developing the program you're going to hear a lot about today. So Katie, it's all yours.
Well, thanks, Mark. Before we dive into the nitty-gritty details, I just wanted to give you a brief background on Choice Local and Joe Neal. Joe is the Executive Vice President for Choice Local. As Mark mentioned, we've been working very closely with him for the last 6 months or so, specifically the last 4 or 5 on the PPA program. They've been managing our pay-per-click campaigns, Facebook, and SEO services. As Mark mentioned, we've really challenged them to think outside the box and beyond the traditional marketing approach that we're used to. Not only did they take on this challenge, but they really fully embraced it, and they proved out to be great partners for us over their work for the last 6 months. So regardless if you're on the PPA program or not, this webinar will be extremely beneficial for your online marketing strategy, and it should be implemented into the work with your current SEO provider, regardless if you're on the PPA program or not. So following this, you can have them connect with me. We'll go over some details at the end about next steps, but Joe here is going to lay out our vision for our online search and the impact it'll have on our future. So Joe, it's all yours.
All right, thanks so much for the intro. What I wanted to do first was just do a very, very quick recap of some of the work that's gone into the PPA program so far. So when it comes to the kinds of things that we've been working on, the kinds of things that we've been working on with Katie and team at FCI, really the activities fall into 3 major buckets. And I think it's important to talk through these buckets at a high level because it puts some of the other strategy we'll be talking about later on into context. So we've been working on on-site, which means optimizing your location-specific website. We've been working on what we call local listings, which really are just third-party websites that contain information about your business, as well as working on paid media opportunities. So anything from Facebook ads to Google ads, Bing ads, and we're exploring other opportunities there as well. So going a little bit deeper into what each of these buckets mean, on-site for us means technical SEO. So we've spent a good deal of time working directly with Katie and the team at corporate to make sure that the site itself is equipped to respond to the kinds of changes we want to make. We've been working a lot on the content and the content strategy. We'll review some of that in specifics in a few moments here. And site architecture. So the layout of information, presentation of information, and the kinds of information we include on the site. Local listings, some of the big ones for us, Google My Business is huge. Google My Business is the listing site associated directly with Google, and Google is the market leader for search. So having that one listing optimized and fully utilized is key. We also provide listing syndication to 74 plus websites, as well as the 3 major aggregators. So this gives everybody who's in the PPA program a lot more visibility. And lastly, NAP consistency. So this sounds trivial, but the actual name of your business, Floor Coverings International of, so-and-so, the address, the placement of the commas, if we use the word suite or STE, and the phone number. Having that information consistent across every citation on the public web and on your website is consistently ranked by SEO experts as the #2 ranking factor for local businesses. So even though it may seem like a detail or it may seem trivial, it's super important for us to make sure that that consistency is in place. And we have some tools and some software that allow us to do that at scale. The last piece that we've been working on is paid media. That includes Google and Bing ads, as well as Facebook. And we're continuing to test new opportunities, new ad formats to drive booked appointments. So that's a little bit about what we've done up to this point. I wanted to talk more about where we're going in the program, as well as talk about some developments that we've been working on in partnership with corporate that, that will be available for the network overall. So the very first thing I wanted to talk about is what we're calling the location-based portfolio project. This is a super important development, and the reason is because there's been a major shift with search and with Google specifically as it relates to the kinds of information that they display at the top of the search results. So to give you guys a sense of how volatile the search landscape is, it used to be the case that when I started in this industry, 7, 8, 9 years ago, we would talk about algorithm updates from Google, and we'd talk about 1 a year, maybe 2 a year. I was just on SEO Roundtable this morning. There's actually been 7 unconfirmed updates over the course of the last 2.5 weeks. So the velocity of the updates are increasing. Google is also changing the way that they make those algorithm updates, and they are really heavily leaning on machine learning. So it's not individuals behind the scenes changing the rules of Google. There's actually computers that are reevaluating the index, reevaluating ranking factors, and reevaluating what's important and what's relevant. So all of this complexity means that having a strategy, that keeps up with what's important to Google is key, and we really have to make sure that we're using the right data and we're looking at the right trends. So the first trend that has sort of fueled into this location-based portfolio strategy is the fact that what Google's looking at heavily now as a ranking factor is how engaging specific pieces of content actually are to the user. The way they evaluate that is by looking at factors like how long a user is spending on an individual page, how quickly they bounce or abandon that page, how many pages they view in a session, and how likely they are to actually click on that page in the first place. All of those factors indicate to the search engine that a specific piece of content is quality. And when we took a look at the historic information for FCI as a brand and as a whole, one of the things that we noticed was that these portfolio pages, these portfolio posts where we're putting up pictures of jobs that have been completed, were really driving a lot of engagement. People were really, going through the whole portfolio. People were spending a lot of time looking at photographs. The bounce rate was low, the abandonment rate was low. So the opportunity for us is when we see certain pages that users interact with and that users like, we know that the search engines like them. And if the search engine sees that as being a high quality page or a high authority page, it's an opportunity for us to blend a keyword strategy that allows us to increase the rankings for your website. So the way we're doing that is by adding these areas we serve pages. Normally areas we serve content can be a little bit flat. So the way that we're adding value and authority to these areas we serve pages, which you kind of see in the image here, is by going ahead and tying these really high engagement portfolio posts to the location itself through the use of keywords, titles, metas, and descriptions. This project is something we worked with FCI corporate team, Katie helped out with, and it actually required us to customize the structure of the site itself. So this required a custom post type. This required us to add a new custom field to the back end of the site. This required us to add new shortcode and new styling to the site. But the end outcome is we have the ability now to support this strategy for all of the websites in the network. And in addition to the technical aspect, we've gone ahead and tried to take a look at some of the market factors that would help us understand how many individual location pages we should have for a website, as well as which of those localities would be a priority, and also take a look at some of the information we had regarding some of the portfolio projects that had already been submitted so that we could tag and categorize them and assign them back to an individual location. So this strategy is really exciting. In the markets where we've started to implement it, we've seen almost immediate rankings increases. This has also increased the amount of indexed content, whereas some of these portfolio posts in the past have not been indexed. We're starting to see these kinds of pages and this kind of content be indexed, and we're starting to see it earn ranking. So this is a big win strategy that just allows us to make the most of what we were already using by taking advantage of site architecture and taking advantage of some of the changes that are happening in the landscape of search. So I'll pause there before jumping into kind of the next big strategy. So this is something that's very much in development. This is going to be a forward, facing strategy. The portfolio pages that I talked to you about are something that's already being implemented, and the short code that enables that is available today for everyone. This product-based strategy is new, and this is going to be the kind of thing that people, FCI franchisees will have an opportunity to opt into, and it's somewhat radical. So bear with me as I explain the kind of the big trend that underlies this. So the big trend behind this product-based strategy is actually huge in the landscape of search, and this goes back to really about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. Google had started to dramatically extract information from individual websites and keep as much information and as much of the user experience as possible directly on Google.com. So rather than having people use Google to find other websites, Google has decided that its users will use Google to find information, not websites. That's a huge philosophical change in the way that search has worked, and it's something that Google is extremely committed to. And to give you a sense of how wide scale that shift actually is, websites like Wikipedia are actually down in traffic by as much as 25% because Google is starting to extract information from Wikipedia. So when somebody goes to the search box and they ask a question like, does the 2019 Accord have a certain safety feature, Google will display the answer directly instead of taking you to the Wikipedia article about the Accord. So this shift in search behavior is huge. The benefit for us is that the mechanisms behind the way that Google finds this information and presents it, some of the players in our industry in the flooring business have been slow to adapt. So we have an ability to make information visible to Google in a structured way. And if we do that, we have an opportunity to really get a leg up on our competitors in the space. So with that kind of introduction laid, the product-based strategy is really one where we want to give Google very explicit information about some of the products. And this is really the first time that we've done that through the public web. There's a ton of benefits to doing it, and I'll go into some of those specific benefits and kind of click you guys through some of the features that Google is allowing us to now show. So the very first benefit that we have for helping Google to understand the products that each individual franchisee offers is what we call the rich image viewer that appears at the top of the search engine result pages. So if somebody goes to Google and they type wood flooring, some generic search like that, the very first thing that they're going to see is actually these pictures of product. And the second thing that they're going to see are the individual websites that are associated with these products. And by the time they get to the bottom or the time they get to page 2 or 3, that's where they're going to find websites like Floor Coverings International that aren't participating with this form of rich information. So we have an opportunity to show up in the mix, both in this rich image viewer and to earn a higher placement in the search engine itself by showing some of this information. And we're working through the right way to position this, the right way to, what information to share, what information not to share. But the implication is there's a whole basket of very broad keywords that currently we don't earn high rankings for, that we almost immediately could by changing the kinds of information that we make available to the search engine. So that's one of the benefits. Another benefit is what we call the site link search box. So again, this actually appears at the right-hand side of the search engine results page for individual websites. And this example is pulled from Lowe's, which is why you see kind of a variety of things here. But Google is really looking for Google My Business listings that contain this level of information. And they're seeing that these websites provide a more high quality experience for a user, and they're favoring websites that provide the data. Another benefit, and again, all of these benefits I'm showing you they come out of sharing the same information. So these are just all of the different ways that we earn visibility within Google.com by sharing that information with the search engine. So what we're showing right now is your ability to actually search within the Google My Business listing. So before I showed you a couple of products that were available, if somebody were to actually click on that Google My Business listing, and in this example, the example is Lowe's, they could then actually search the available products, and they could search for flooring, they could search for luxury vinyl tile, they could search whatever they like, and they'd be able to see information related to the products that are there. So one of the things that we're seeing as it relates to kind of the buying journey that people go through when they're first evaluating flooring or they're first evaluating a project is they want to understand, early on, what kind of product is suitable. This gives us an opportunity to help them do the research before we get too far along that process, or before they get, down the road with one of our competitors, a big box store, something like that. Another benefit of sharing this very simple data with Google in a structured way is the shopping feed. So this enables a whole new tab in Google, and it gives us the ability to show up in the shopping feed along with major competitors. So the example here would be if somebody were searching wood flooring Home Depot. One of the benefits for a brand like ours who's really trying to do more to increase our discovery, we want people to be able to find us through these discovery searches, is even if somebody uses a very specific phrase like wood flooring Home Depot, you notice the very second result is from a company called Go Hardwood. So this gives us a fighting chance to get in and get some visibility and really show up in places where a lot of our more traditional competitors aren't showing up. One of the final benefits here is what we call rich product snippets. So this is when someone is just on normal Google. This allows us to actually show up higher for very specific keywords. And this is an example of what a rich snippet looks like. So we have a product rating. We have, some very specific product information, all being pulled directly from the same source of information, that Google's pulling all of these other display iterations. And, the thing that's important is this week, these are the ways that Google is using this data. Next week, that may change. So there's been kind of a prolific expansion of the way that people can access this information. And like I said, it does change rapidly. The best thing that we can do, though, is make sure we're providing information in a structured way, in the way that Google and Bing want to see it, so that they can utilize the information, based on what they think gives their users the best experience. One of the other things that I think is really exciting and really interesting is we have the ability through structured data to mark up related products. So if somebody finds a product that Home Depot has in stock or that one of our competitors has in stock, we can actually say, hey, ours is like that but better, and we can show up in that same search. So this gives us an opportunity if somebody is thinking of going the traditional route, maybe they've never heard of Floor Coverings International, they can see related products that are related to us, and they can actually, in that way, we can kind of divert their buying behavior. So we talked about rich snippets. This is, again, that example of snippets. And the final kind of big tactic I wanted to talk about is rich content. So we talked about Wikipedia and how Google is really trying to serve answers on Google.com instead of trying to serve websites as the answer. Rich content, there's a couple of new formats that we can supply to Google so that we can participate in that as well. So the first example I'm showing you guys right now is a rich snippet called the FAQ snippet. If somebody Googled what is luxury vinyl tile, instead of showing a variety of web pages about luxury vinyl tile, what Google does now is it gives you an answer. It says luxury vinyl tile is durable, waterproof flooring, da 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 da. And this answer is associated with the company who provided the structured snippet, where they basically say, hey, Google, if someone asks this, this is what you should show. And Google has tested this as an answer to that, and they found that it's a pretty good answer. So whenever somebody searches what is luxury vinyl tile within a certain geography, Flooring America is the brand that shows up. So Flooring America had the foresight to use FAQ snippets for some of these topics, and as a result, they have the #1 ranking for luxury vinyl tile. So this for us is a no-brainer. You know, the Floor Coverings International brand is really big on kind of being an authority and having really high quality products. So being able to answer these kinds of questions is, you know, just something that we absolutely want to do online. So this is something we're going to take advantage of as well. Another example of how these rich snippets work is with the kind of the new approach that Google's using to site links. So the example here is how to buy flooring. Maybe, you know, I've never bought flooring before. I don't even know where to start. Google is now displaying site links that are no longer based on navigation. These site links are based on specific pages that they think best answers the question. So you'll notice when Lowe's shows up, they have a hardwood flooring buying. They have a laminate floor buying guide. They have all of these very specific pieces of content to help educate customers and help answer the individual question. So again, the big takeaway, Google wants to be able to answer your question as effortlessly and frictionlessly as possible, and they're doing that by giving brands like us the opportunity to very explicitly say, when somebody asks this, this is a good answer. And that's what we're going to do. The final example of how this rich markup works is, you know, if someone is asking a question and Google's not totally confident they've got a good answer, we have the ability now to have keywords highlighted so that bits and pieces of information in our answer get pulled through, which increases the visibility of our page in search and results ranking. So those are some of the exciting things that we're going to do. All of these changes are going to be available to the broader network. A lot of this took, you know, kind of a concerted effort between our team, between FCI Corporate, help from Katie, help from Mark, help from a couple other, you know, partners of the Floor Coverings International brand to help, you know, kind of get the site into shape to take advantage of these things. And I hope that this is as exciting for you guys as it is for us. We see a huge amount of opportunity in front of us. And, you know, at this point, we've got a really good foundation in place to start implementing these kinds of aggressive tactics that we think will help cause a lot of growth.
Thanks, Joe. And then before we jump into some questions, I'll just wrap up with some items. But I forgot to mention at the beginning, Choice Local was actually the sponsor for Joe Theismann at the convention. So I wanted to give a little shout out and thank you to Joe and his team for helping facilitate that. I think we can all agree that that was a huge highlight from convention. So thanks, Joe. Then also, if you're on the PPA program, as Joe mentioned, we're already working on all this behind the scenes. So there's nothing you really need to do on your end except keep sending us project photos. If you haven't already, please start to do so. The more the merrier. I know some people are like, oh, I feel bad emailing you all these. Like, we want them, so keep them coming. Secondly, if you're not on the PPA program and you're interested, reach out to me. I can facilitate any questions you have and help you with the sign-up process. And then if you're not on the PPA program and not interested, there's nothing to worry about. You can still do all of this with your SEO partner. We're recording this webinar so you can share it with them, have them reach out to me if they have any questions. And then lastly, we'll also be hosting a preferred partner webinar sometime in the next week or two, or we'll have our preferred partners all on a webinar, and they'll present for 15 minutes or so, give a little mini presentation on their company and services, and you can learn more about them in the background and make a decision if you want to make any changes or switch providers at all. So that will be announced probably in the next few days once we have those dates solidified, but keep your eyes peeled for that date as well.
And Katie, just to add a little clarity on that, by the Preferred Partner Program, Choice Local will continue to lead all of the work for the pay-per-appointment program and really be our kind of trusted advisors around the national strategy for our online footprint. But we're also going to introduce to the network 4 digital agencies, one of which is Choice Local, and 3 others who, if you don't want to be part of the pay-per-appointment program, we would recommend you work with. And then, of course, you also have a third option, which is to go find your own local agency. But we want to make sure that we provide to franchisees plenty of options to be able to execute these strategies. So the webinar Katie's talking about will be introducing you to the 4 preferred partners, one of which is Choice Local, that you could engage individually as a franchisee for your digital marketing if you decide the pay-per-appointment program isn't for you, but you still want to execute forward-thinking strategies like the ones that Joe has outlined today.
Yeah, and to clarify really quickly too, you can work with Choice not being on the PPA program. I think there's some confusion with that too. We have some franchisees that are doing a la carte SEO services with them and not on the PPA program. So that's also an option. And then we have the 3 others that will be presenting as well. I know Chair 10 you've worked with, a lot of people have worked with them. They're one of them as well, and then we'll have 2 others. So we have a lot of options for you guys to implement these changes, and we're really excited to see the growth this year in 2019.
Yeah, and Katie, just one more quick thing, sorry, on the preferred partner program. The reason that that's so important is that, as you can see from what Joe presented today, we are really starting to work on driving a significant national digital strategy. In the coming months, and definitely in the coming years, it's going to become more and more important, if you're not on the national pay-per-appointment program, that your digital agency be aligned with what we are doing nationally. Otherwise, you'll miss out on a lot of the opportunities that are being presented by this more national strategy. So the reason we're moving forward with the pay-per-appointment program or the preferred partner program, is that those are the vendors who are aware, understand our brand, and know what we're doing nationally and can better support you locally with an understanding of that national strategy. So that's the layer that preferred partner program fills. We didn't want to make it exclusive to Choice Local, and honestly, they didn't want it to be exclusive to them. They wanted others as well, so we can get more feedback into the network. So we have 3 other preferred partners in addition to Choice Local that we'll be introducing next week.
Does anyone have any questions for Joe, Mark, myself?
Katie, I have a couple for Joe, and they're admittedly leading, but I want him to dig into this a little bit more as well. So Joe, you talked about the rich content snippets at the very end, and I'd love for you to connect the dots between the value that has and this new phenomenon of search via voice, where instead of going to their keyboard, people ask their phone a question, and the role that this rich content snippet plays in order to prepare us for the obvious trend toward voice search as opposed to keyword search.
Yeah, so that's a fantastic question. The reality is more people, when they access the internet, are accessing the internet on a mobile device than they are on any other devices, so tablet and desktop, laptop. All 3 of those included. More people use a mobile phone when they access the internet today than the other 3. One of the big takeaways and behavior that we've seen over the course of the last 12 months or so is that because those devices have voice recognition built directly into the hardware, voice search is becoming a huge trend. And because, Siri is, the easiest thing in the world to do is just ask Siri a question. When those questions and those queries come through, normally what ends up happening is they end up hitting a search engine like Google. So the way that these FAQ snippets and these rich snippets work with voice is the same way that they do for a text-based query. The big difference is that there's much more intent when someone is using voice. They're usually asking a very specific question. And sometimes when people are actually going to Google and typing, it's a little bit more of a broad search. It's more of a discovery search. So as voice continues to become more and more of a trend in search, making sure that we're using FAQ snippets specifically and that we're answering questions in a structured way is critically important. It's never been more important. And that's why, Google is so aggressively changing the layouts that users see. And, the layout that you see when you search Google on a mobile phone versus a tablet versus a desktop, it's all completely different. And the layout that you see is also dependent on the search query that you use. It's also dependent on the search queries that you've used in the past. So your history helps Google determine your intent. And there, the way that the algorithm works, it's just fantastically complex. But the big trend is being able to answer those questions and doing our part, which is the easy part, just telling Google the answer and telling Google the question, allows Google then to serve that information up in, a really wide variety of ways. All of those benefit our brand.
Awesome, Joe. Thank you. Katie, do you want to lead through the questions or do you want me to?
I can. So it looks like you answered Sammy's question. Sammy had a question about the current website and the product information. Sammy, are you referring to the gallery that Mark mentioned in the chat?
Yes. The question is, almost every time I'm in a customer's house and I show them a product, try to show them some pictures of it, room scenes and stuff, they always say, do you have a link where I could go look at it? And then we have our private labeled merchandise, supposedly, like Dolce Vita and all that. If you go search on the internet, you don't find anything about it. Wouldn't it be smart to have like a centralized place, like with our complete product catalog, each product thicknesses, durabilities, warranty, not necessarily prices, but this is what I'm going with it. Like Shaw has a catalog I could get from them for like $100 a month. I could put it in my website that shows all my private label product, and I could set the price if I want to.
Yeah, so there is a tremendous value, I think, for the consumer. There's tremendous search benefit to making that information available and making it information available in a transparent way to both consumers and to the search engine itself. So the second big strategy we were talking about is, making some of that product information available. That's very much where we're trying to go. And the way that we see this working is, instead of having one central repository for all this information, we want to give individual locations the ability to choose the way that information is displayed for their individual franchise. And so we're going to be deploying this as a plugin that attaches to each individual website and can be customized for each individual website so that control is in place.
Does that answer your question, Sammy?
Yes, it does. Is Choice Local going to be updating the websites? And because we had access to going in there and trying to edit some of the pages and all that, and I believe half of the franchisees screwed it up when they got in there. Is there a new website coming, or are we going to reset all this and get it fixed?
So today we are working on enhancing the current website structure, adding some of these features that we just talked about to that. And our team for the groups that we work with, for the franchisees that we work with in the PPA program, we're very hands-on in making those edits and being the one behind the scenes. But the strategies that I talked about are also available so that they could be deployed, by groups not necessarily working with Choice Local.
And then Cass, it looks like she had a follow-up question from Sammy's. Cass, what was your question?
Yeah, so I just wanted to know if in the future, Joe, if people would be able to specifically search for a certain type and brand of flooring, because like some contractors or anybody in commercial, I realize like they know what they want, and sometimes they just want to see if certain flooring stores have that, like would there be a way that they could that could show up from a Google search that we have that just from searching that keyword,
Yes. So that's what we want to be able to enable. We want somebody who's searching. Yep, that's the goal for this.
Okay, and then I did have another question about, it's like probably I'm just nitpicking, but in the very beginning you said it's like really important that all of our information stays the same throughout all platforms, like address and phone number. I didn't know if it's not necessarily bad, but inconvenient that like our number posted on Google, like our phone number, is different than our website. I know there's call centers and that goes into that, but is that something that matters?
Yeah, and Cass, if you're on the PPA program, your call tracking number should be the same as what's on the website, Google, and Facebook now. If that's changed at all, let me know, but we do want that consistent with the website and Google and Facebook, specifically for those 3 sites because they're super important. If you do have a call tracking number, we do recommend changing it on like your lead portals to like Home Advisor and Thumbtack, just because that would help even more. But the big important ones would be your website, Google, and Facebook. But I
just looked it up and they are different. Like Facebook and Google are the same, and then our website is different, which is kind of confusing that our website is the different one, I feel.
Yeah, I'll look into that right after this call because that should be the same on all 3.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, good catch, Cass. All right, and then next up we have Anne. She said, what should we be doing to help increase and improve content in our portfolio?
Yeah, so the big thing is the photos are huge. So making sure that you're sending those photos across and getting those updated, that's really critically important. In addition to that, the before and after seems to be what people really, really like. So if it's possible to get a before and after photograph, that's fantastic. Also, the locality where that picture, where that project happened, what neighborhood or, community that took place in, that allows us to add a couple extra pieces of information to the post itself, which makes it more likely that the next time somebody is searching keywords related to that locality, that our website will show up.
Yeah, and if you have product details at all too, that the more detail you have in your photos, the better. All those keywords really help.
Yeah, and Katie, just a reminder to everybody on the call, if you're on the PPA program, all you have to do is email those photos to Joe or to Matt, I guess, on Joe's team and or Katie, and they'll get them up on your website for you for free.
Yeah.
Right.
If a lot of people just email them to me. There's a lot of emails going around. Feel free to send them directly to me and I'll forward them over to them. But it's a huge part of our SEO strategy, so keep them coming. They're great.
Yeah, and to just kind of echo Katie's point, if you can provide details about the product, it saves Matt from having to squint his eyes and try and see if there's like grout in the picture or not and determine if it's, specifically what it is. We try to do the best we can to make those accurate when we don't have the information, but if you could provide it, it is helpful.
And I have a follow-up question, Joe, from that question. Do you have advice on videos from projects at all, or do you recommend people doing that? Yeah,
video is better than photo. So if you have video, that's even better still. So, and then we're talking internally about doing some like slideshows or collages when we have really clean before and after. So the higher production quality that you can put into that, be it video, be it photo, whatever you have, send it. But if you could put the extra 30 seconds in to make sure that, the lighting is good and things like that, it goes a long way, because this is where people are judging you as the franchisee. It's based on, the quality of the work that they can see. So if you've done a fantastic, install job, you're shooting yourself in the foot by not taking pictures of it or by taking poor quality pictures of it. So the extra time spent there is definitely worthwhile. Yeah, just really try to make it part of nature of your business. Whenever you do the walk around, get those project photos and send them over. All right, second question, Travis Wynn, did you have a question?
Let's see, you're muted, Travis. Okay, I'll jump to Stuart really quick. He asked if there's any analytics on the quality of the leads generated from these sources.
So I can speak to the quality of the leads that we see coming from Facebook, from Google advertising, and from SEO. One of the things that we typically see, and this is kind of agnostic of industry, but we typically see that there's the highest intent behind paid ad type traffic and organic, so SEO type traffic. And we sometimes see that the quality can sometimes be slightly lower from Facebook. So one of the things that our team does is we try to really pay attention to that. You know, in the pay per appointment program, you guys really are you know, doing exactly what it sounds like. You're only paying for each individual appointment. So if something is junk or something doesn't actually count as a paid appointment, you're not going to be billed for that. We really do focus on quality, and our job is to optimize your program, not just for rankings, not just for clicks, but to make sure that all of these activities lead to real appointments that have a chance to get you guys at bat.
All right, and then Travis's question, he had specific questions if we can show logos or brands that we carry on the website, like Esmer, Deltile, Shaw, Mohawk, and Armstrong.
I'm probably not the right person to answer if we're allowed to do that. I mean,
Yep.
Technically that's an easy thing for us to do, but I'll defer to Mark and Katie there.
Yeah, so obviously, as everyone's aware, with our private label and some of the work we do with the Inspired Sale, there's a bit of some sensitivity around that. We've had some good discussions here corporately. I'm not prepared yet to say yes or no, but I will tell you that if you can read between the lines, a lot of the strategies Joe outlined today, especially those around the products, are probably not going to be as effective if we're not able to expose the manufacturer's name. So the hope would be that we can figure out a balance between the way the Inspired Sale has been designed to work and the ability for us to use manufacturer names, and I'm pretty optimistic we'll be there.
Well, thanks, Mark. And then Kathy asked, how specific do we need to be when describing photos? Actually name the product or just the type of product?
The type of product is sufficient, and then our team will do the best we can to provide a little bit of color and provide a little bit of marketing quality to it. But yeah, so long as we're not getting the facts wrong, I think that's the most important thing.
So Joe, I've got another question as we kind of head toward wrap up, just to give people time if they've got another question, because I think we're at the end. And this is what really excites me about the strategy. And it's kind of a question, kind of a comment, but I want you to speak to it. So I am a big believer that where Google is headed, and as you outlined so appropriately, where Google is headed rapidly is basically eliminating the need for a consumer to spend any time on a company's website. And that's been a big shift in how we think about SEO and how we think about our online strategy. It used to be all about our website and all about the keywords that were on our website. But Google has gotten so smart through the machine learning and through their ability to index content that it seems to me, and has for the last couple years, that Google is in essence saying, I want to take the company's website out of the equation and keep the consumer on Google. So shoot holes in that if you'd like, or add to that if you'd like. But I also think that's a massive benefit of where you guys are leading us, in the terms that it prepares us for that, which I believe is an inevitable transition in the way Google changes consumers' online behavior.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the only thing I'll add to that is that we're kind of living through this intermediate phase right now where they're realizing that the website isn't the best way to make a recommendation. Essentially what Google does is they're making a recommendation every time somebody searches a specific keyword, every time somebody searches a specific query. And what ultimately Google wants to do is they want to keep users coming back to Google as a source of information. So their goal, if somebody's looking for a hardwood flooring installer, isn't to provide the hardwood flooring installer that has the best website. Their goal is to provide the best hardwood flooring installer, period. And the way that they're starting to evaluate that is they're looking at reviews, they're looking at rankings, they're looking at, Angie's List, they're looking at third-party sites, they're looking at Google.com, and they're starting to put more emphasis on how close the installer is. They're starting to put more emphasis on some of these other factors that have nothing to do with, what keywords you use on your website. So Google's ultimate goal is to be able to just serve that information purely on Google.com. And sort of the intermediate step that I alluded to is they're relying on these third-party websites that provide an array of information about different businesses and points of comparison between different businesses that come in the way of reviews and that come in the way of, highlighted jobs and things like that. So we're kind of living in like this aggregator world right now. But Google's ultimate goal, I think, is to take power away from, the Yelp.coms and the Indeed.coms and to start to make that information part of their core database. So if we can, take advantage of some of these trends, take advantage of some of the features that Google's making available, it allows us to, be rewarded as a brand and to be rewarded, at the individual unit level as well. So that's where we're trying to go for sure.
Joe, thank you. And Katie, I'm going to send this back to you to wrap up, but I'm also just going to take that as an opportunity to stress what I started with. If I'm an owner, and I would encourage you all to really think about what Joe just outlined and what I said, theoretically, I believe Google is headed toward. We all look at the likes of aggregators of HomeAdvisor and Thumbtack, and we know the risks of building our businesses to depend on those. We're not that far from being in exactly the same scenario with Google, because if you play out what we just talked about, what that means is that in the digital world, there's a high likelihood that in the coming 3 to 5 years, our success or failure online may well be out of our hands. And if I'm an owner of a Floor Coverings International business or any other business, frankly, what that means is I have to put even greater urgency and greater emphasis around making sure that I own my community and that I have the ability to go out and generate my own leads and my own opportunities through the local marketing activities that we talked about at convention. Because just like what HomeAdvisor and Thumbtack and others have been able to do on the aggregation side, Google is headed in that direction. And it may well be that we can benefit from that. And if we do, that's awesome. But just as easily as it could end up being a benefit for us as a brand, it also potentially could become a danger and is another reason why we need to make sure that we increase our local marketing so that we as a brand and you as owners control our own destiny moving forward.
Yeah, and one small piece we didn't touch on, Joe, could you maybe briefly go over just the importance of Google reviews with this too and how important those are right now and where the future is going? We really need to go out there and get those Google reviews now so we're at a healthy, standpoint when all these changes are occurring.
Yeah, so reviews are a top 3 ranking factor today for local businesses. So, and they have been really for the past 6 to 12 months. So reviews are critically important. What continues to change in the algorithm is where those reviews need to happen. Google My Business is by far the most important place to get reviews. But Google isn't stupid, and they're looking to see if individual users are providing spammy reviews. And they're looking also to make sure that, if you have 50 or 60 reviews on Google, they would typically expect that you probably have the same kind of rating and that you're starting to get a somewhat similar number of reviews on other properties as well, Facebook, Yelp.com, things like that, because that's the buying behavior that they see nationwide. So if they see only that, if they see that only reviews are happening on maybe Google, for example, or only Facebook, it looks fishy to them. And again, the underlying trend here is Google wants to provide a recommendation about the best installer, not the one with the best digital strategy. And they're looking for these indicators like reviews to help them provide, some rationale behind who gets that recommendation. So being proactive about reviews is super important. Definitely don't be tempted to try and game or spam the system, because Google does heavily penalize when they find that, fake reviews have been submitted and things to that effect.
Yes, don't have your office manager write a review. Don't write one about another franchisee. Like, Google knows that you work for Floor Coverings. They're very smart. So make sure they're authentic, real reviews from customers. All right, I think we're pretty much wrapped up, you guys. Thank you for your time. As mentioned, if you're interested in the PPA program, reach out to me. If you're on the PPA program, we're working on all these for you already. And we will keep everyone updated on the Preferred Partner webinar coming up in a week or two.
Awesome. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Joe. Have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thanks, Joe.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.